Welcome to Amanda Spann's Minimal Viable Podcast, the show that gives you a real and relatable look at the world of tech and entrepreneurship from industry all-stars. Today's episode of MVP features serial app entrepreneur Sheena Allen. At only 30 years old, Sheena is the youngest Black woman in the country to own a neo or online bank. We'll explore her path to launch, as well as helping the unbanked both domestically and abroad find financial opportunity. MVP is brought to you by Simplero, the all-in-one software for online entrepreneurs. Most digital coaches, consultants, and entrepreneurs are using 7+ online tools that still don't meet their needs. Simplero reduces the headache of product management by allowing you to host your mailing list, online courses, membership communities, marketing automation, and digital products all on one platform. It's my personal go-to tool of choice for selling my ebooks and courses, and I think it's pretty affordable, simple to use, and easy to get started. So if you like to experience less tech and less stress when selling your content or products online, check out Simplero at simplero.com. That's SIMPLERO.com. Now let's start the show.
Hi, Sheena. Welcome to MVP. Very happy to have you. Long time no speak. I feel like it's been forever since we caught up.
It has. It's been a good minute.
Yeah, we've got close alchemy and everything. For my listeners who don't know, me and Sheena kind of worked together on my first app, Alchemy. It wasn't Sheena's first app, but it was my first app, and she added me on LinkedIn, and I was like, oh my God, please help me, because it's my first app. I'm not sure what I'm doing, and I need your help. But since then, we worked on that, and we've worked on a number of other projects, and Sheena is making tremendous moves with her new company, CapWay, so we'll dive into that today. But before we get started, I want to thank you again for coming, and then, give you an opportunity to kind of tell our listeners a little bit about yourself and your background, and, your experiences kind of, evolving as a non-technical founder.
Cool. I'm with it. I'm ready.
So where should we start? So you're from Mississippi.
I am. Can't you tell by the accent?
You can't miss it, Sheena. You really can't miss it. But, being from Mississippi, there are some players in the tech space in Mississippi, but, I think they're very fragmented and kind of few and far between. So, what was that experience like, kind of, you started your first business when you were an undergrad, but, did you find it to be kind of challenging or intimidating or just like a nerve-wracking process, jumping into the tech space as an undergraduate without a tech background, and being in Mississippi?
Crazy enough, I think not knowing was my gift. So I didn't know. I knew that Mississippi was definitely not like a tech place for sure, but I didn't know that you're not supposed to do this as especially like a Black female from Mississippi, especially like being so young. Like this is not what most people are doing or want to do. It was just like, I got this idea, let's go for it, and you figure it out. It wasn't until I actually got into it that I realized, okay, this is nerve-wracking. There's no infrastructure. There's nobody to really call on to help me at all. Like, there's no tech companies that I can be like, can you mentor me? Can I come, check out what you guys have going on? So it wasn't until I got actually deep into it that it did become nerve-wracking, because there was no one else to really help me or guide me.
It's kind of like one of those things where it's like you don't know what you don't know. And then gradually as you become more immersed in it, you're like, oh, shit, I really don't know what the hell is going on. Like, you have this, I read this article the other day, and it was just talking about Interesting Horowitz and the type of founders they invest in. And they like people who are almost egomaniacal, like overly confident, like people who are just like, I'm blindly confident about my product, about my team, and like there's nothing you can tell me. But I think once you get into the mix of things and you start realizing like this is way bigger than me, it can make you kind of shrink and feel very, very small. And I'm not necessarily hopeless, but just very alone in the process.
Yeah, I'll say that so there's two sides. On the good side, I'm glad I didn't know, because I don't know if I would have done it. I don't know if I would have went so deep in so fast if I would have been like, there's someone here to help me, let me think of something else, or I would have been like, oh, well, let me try to move to, Silicon Valley first and then do something. So I think not knowing also helped because I wasn't afraid because I didn't know. But then there's the other side, like you said, that you do get into it, and then it's like, well, either you're going to quit or you're going to have to figure out, like, what's next.
Yeah, sink or swim. But, I mean, I know you've worked on multiple projects since then. You had, your portfolio of apps did really, really well, and they're still doing well. I want you to kind of dive into, like, what it is like, being involved with multiple projects. I'm sure even with CapWay, you probably have some other things that are happening right now, like whether that be, creating content, side projects, passion projects. So, like, what is that like, managing multiple projects from day to day and just running a project as large as CapWay? And then, like, do you ever find that, like, your stakeholders, investors, suggest that you're possibly spreading yourself too thin?
So you're right. I do work on multiple projects, even now, even with CapWay. But I think if you have, especially if you've done it before, so in my case, I've done this before, when you learn to prioritize is really important. So with me, for example, I know that CapWay gets majority of my attention. If I had to say out of 100%, probably 85% of my, probably 85. Honestly, I might even say 90% of my focus goes to CapWay. The beauty of what I've learned to do with my side projects or my passion projects is that even though I'm working on them, and even though they're actually making me money, who else can I bring in to help run those companies so that I'm not having to give 100% to them? So maybe it's something that I created, I started. I'm definitely like the creative mind behind it. I'm doing my part. But I also brought someone in who now I can put in a position to be there 100%, and then I'm still putting in whatever percent I can to make sure things are still going smoothly and the money's still coming in. So prioritizing is really, really important. But on the other side, that's your second question, especially investors, they're always going to want you to be like 100% focused on whatever money they're putting, on whatever project they're putting money behind. But my opinion on that is I agree. I mean, if I was putting money behind somebody, I want them 100% focused on that. But who is actually like a millionaire or billionaire who only focuses on one thing? Everybody's going to have multiple streams of income. That's just the reality of it. I do think that as minorities, we get where people are a little tougher on us when it comes to this subject, because you see everybody who has like 4 or 5 projects going on, and nobody says anything, but let, someone of color be like, yeah, I got like these 4 projects. It's like, you can't do that. Like, you need to focus on one thing. So like, no, we can do 4 things too. Especially once again, when you've done it before, you know how to prioritize, you know how to hire people when and where you need them. It's okay to do more than one thing if you do it the right way.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I definitely think that, we get looked at funny when we say, okay, well, I have multiple apps or I have multiple projects going on. It's like, oh, you're not focused, you're not really dedicated. Well, yes, I am. And, it's funny because I was talking to Rashawn Williams a couple months ago, and for those of you who don't know, he's an investor, owns a couple funds and everything, and he helps a lot of professional athletes invest as well. And he was just saying that, like, he's like, I don't know a million. He said the exact same thing. I don't know a millionaire who doesn't have multiple things going on. And he was like, anybody who really sees your value and sees your worth knows that you're going to need multiple things going on to sustain yourself, especially if you haven't raised yet. So, or if, you've raised, but that money is allocated towards your business. It's not play money. And like in this day and age, people need multiple streams of income to survive. So, someone who really believes in you and your product, it's really not going to be an issue for. I feel like the people who say, you're spreading yourself too thin, or you should be working on so many projects or whatnot, are people who we're probably going to doubt you anyway.
Yeah, I mean, if it's for me, it's like I have my personal things going on, so everything's like speaking engagements, But then there's the business side. So I have CapWay, but we also pivoted Sheena Allen apps to what is now App It Out. So I do that part. But I mean, I also have a team that also helps with that and other small projects. But yes, like you want, and I'll give an example to the point you just made. It has not happened to me, and I hope it doesn't, but I'm not saying it won't. But I've seen it happen to multiple friends where they have to end up maybe cutting their own pay to themselves because maybe they're running low on cash as far as like their main business. So maybe like they're paying their team, but they're currently not paying themselves until maybe they raise more money. And in the midst of that happening, they're having to rely on the money that maybe they're making from like speaking engagements or from the other project to make sure that they can pay their rent or they can make sure food is on the table. So I think it's just part of being a startup founder.
Yeah, absolutely. I totally agree. So I want to get into CapWay. I feel like, CapWay is the star right now. And it is, I want to hear all about it because I do know about CapWay, but I'm not sure our listeners are as privy yet. And I kind of want to know, kind of hear the backstory of why you decided to start CapWay and like how running, App It Out and Sheena Allen apps kind of prepared you for that. And if there was anything you had to kind of unlearn about, managing apps or managing a product to prepare yourself to manage CapWay on a day-to-day basis.
So Sheena Allen apps, for those who don't know, that was my first company, 5 apps. We did roughly, before we pivoted more to strictly focusing and changing to App It Out, did roughly like 4 million downloads. And I bootstrapped that company, so I never took any money from that company. So definitely the biggest difference is I went from owning 100%. I went from answering to no one but myself. I went from everything just kind of being like, you're in control, and whatever, if tomorrow I decide that I want to change the logo, if tomorrow I want to decide that I'm going to shut it down, I'm going to add a new app, whatever the case, it was all on me. I made those decisions. And with CapWay, we have investors. We're a VC-backed company. And it's like you're no longer 100% in control. And, of course, we take more money. You become more diluted. You have monthly meetings, and you have to send monthly updates out. And you get, the numbers, especially as a woman of color, our numbers are always going to look worse than everybody else's numbers when it comes to the valuations they want to give us, and why we need more traction, even though we got more traction than somebody else who has getting way more money. So that's, without question, been the biggest difference in regards to those two companies. As far as unlearning anything, I won't say actually everything that's from that first company helped me in going into my second company. But there was a lot of, as far as learning around raising money, and I was very, very lucky to say that the lead investor that I had in our round, in this round actually we have now, was led by Initialized Capital. So for those who don't know, that one of the co-founders of that is Alexis O'Hannon. In the Black community, he's pretty much known as Serena Williams' husband. But he created Reddit, which is a $1 billion company. He spent years at YC, helping over at YC. And so either with Alexis or some of the other investors that we have, I've been very blessed to have really, really great investors who very early have been a big help. So I don't have any of the horror stories, thank God, that a lot of people of color, minorities have when it comes to raising money. But so I don't have to unlearn anything, but it's been a learning process, and I've been able to learn from some amazing people to be, still early stage. But so into CapWay, the company came about 2015. I was really at a point where I didn't know what I wanted to do with Sheena Allen apps. The company in itself was still actually doing well. It was bringing in money. I didn't know the next step. I didn't know if I wanted to raise money for it, because once again, bootstrapped this entire time. I didn't know if, like, I wanted to try to join forces with somebody else. Like, I was completely lost on the next step, which is crazy. You would think, like, okay, this is somebody who was, doing hundreds of thousands of downloads still at that time of month. Like, why are you lost? And it's like, even though I wanted to raise, I didn't want to raise. I wanted to be more of a lifestyle brand company, but I wasn't really sure on the direction that I wanted to go. And I'm a spiritual person. I won't say I'm a religious person at all, but I'm definitely a spiritual person. So it was me, 2015, I kind of stepped back and was like, what am I going to do? Like, I got to figure this out. And I ended up going back home to Mississippi, which is where I'm from, for the holiday season. So this was roughly late November, December 2015. And while I was at home, I noticed that people in my community, which here in Mississippi, a really small country town in Mississippi, the people that were my age, so mid to late 20s, they were doing the same things that I saw our parents and our grandparents doing, which was, cashing checks at the grocery store and the convenience store, and there was still only one bank in my town. And I had the pleasure and the blessing of being in Silicon Valley back when, Uber was like just starting to disrupt taxis, and Airbnb was just starting to disrupt, hotels. And I had the experience, of course, of Sheena Allen apps, and I was just like, dang, like, how can I use technology to, like, disrupt, like, what's going on as far as financial inequality? Because we see it all the time. For me, I personally see it. Like, my great-grandmother never had a bank account. She kept her money in her house. And my grandmother, I've personally taken her plenty of times to, like, a check cashing place. So it was, for me, it was like stepping back and seeing that. And instead of being like, oh, this is normal, or stepping back and being like, oh, this is a problem and somebody's going to solve it, I more so saw it like, okay, I know the tech field. I know that tech can disrupt and change shit. How can I take what I know about being from this community? I know the psychological factors of being completely unbanked or underbanked or not having adequate access. How can I couple that with my experience of technology and just create something crazy? So that is actually how CapWay came about.
Okay, and can you tell us a little bit more about the product itself? I've read that it's described as a neobank, but I'm not exactly sure what that means, or so, like in the context of like of the users, right? So I know that you guys provide cards and provide financial literacy to help people better utilize their money and change their relationship with money. But what does that look like in the form of a product?
Yeah, so we are a neobank or a challenger bank, which means we're all digital. There's no brick and mortar. You do everything from the convenience of your phone, the mobile app. So that's what we do. Our core price is a debit card. But what is really different about what we do versus if you was to look at a different challenger bank like a Chime or Simple is the number one is the audience that we target. So if the average person who will probably have like a Chime account or a Simple account, they could also, if they wanted to, easily go and probably get like a Bank of America account or a Chase account or a Wells Fargo account. The audience that we're targeting, they can't just up and easily go get one of those accounts, either because they don't have access to it. A lot of people don't know that if you live in a large metropolitan area, but like there's no Wells Fargo in Louisiana. Being from Mississippi, there's no Chase Bank in Mississippi. So the audience is people who probably don't have access to banks like that. If anything, they only have access to like credit unions or like local banks who doesn't have the same advancements as like your larger banks. The other thing that's very different about what we do is the whole point of creating this company was, even though the core product of what we do and who we are is a debit card, it's about giving people plastic with no hidden fees, no overdraft. It was also really important to now make sure that people who now will have access can participate in today's what's known as the cashless economy. So let's say that people can now shop online, people can now catch an Uber, people can now have Netflix. And I know for some people they're probably laughing like, how in the world in 2019 people don't have the ability to shop online? Like there's a lot of people who are still completely unbanked, not even underbanked, like completely unbanked, who can't shop online because they don't have the plastic to do so. So now it's giving an audience the opportunity to not have Netflix if they want Netflix, or shop online if they want to shop online. And then for the people who have had access, now is their opportunity to get a bank that understands them on a different level than what maybe their bank does. So there's maybe less fees, or maybe it's like we don't require a minimum balance. So there's a lot of banks who require you to have like $250 in your account, or they charge you a fee, which is an issue because it's like I'm having to pay, to access my own money or even keep money in a bank. And if I'm already struggling, I don't have $250. Like, you taking away $10 a month ain't helping me. So it's the audience that we target, and we target an audience who, for us, we want them to finally be like, I feel seen. And we get it a lot. People like, finally, like, I feel seen. It's not that they're not an afterthought. You have a lot of the big banks now who are trying to get into like the unbanked, underbanked, or the financially underserved. Because millennials, we struggle, like, as a whole. I'm just saying that, like, if the numbers prove it. Like, we, as a whole, make less than our grandparents did at this age. Like, we are not in the best position financially. And I didn't want people to continuously feel like, oh, well, now this bank has a program, quote unquote, for me. Like, it's not an afterthought. Like, this was a company built from the ground up from someone who knows what it's like not always having that opportunity and access. And it was about giving them a full ecosystem. So the biggest thing that makes us different is who we are as a company. Yes, the debit card is our core, but we do financial literacy. So it's about educating people, and it's educating them in a way that's very relevant to who they are. So our financial literacy is nowhere near like your polished, textbook, boring financial literacy. We're talking about securing the bag, and we're talking about, whether it's interviewing. We just finished interviewing Brandon Copeland like early last week, who's an NFL player. And, one of the things he talked about in his interview was, a lot of kids want to go to the league, but here's the truth about when you go to the league. For every dollar you make, technically you only bring home 50 cents because of taxes and because of agents and all this stuff. So the financial literacy is done, and I won't say it's dumbed down because it's actually not dumbed down. It's just that we make it relevant to our audience if we meet them where they are. And then over time, as far as our roadmap, we'll be adding micro lending and credit and so many more things where no longer will people have to lead outside of the CapWay ecosystem to go over here and get a loan from a payday lender, or run over here and try to get a credit card because, of course, you need a credit card to rent a car. Like, whatever you need to become financially healthy and to the point of growing and creating generational wealth, you'll be able to do it with CapWay.
Okay. All right. Well, I think that's hugely important because I don't think, I think we take it for granted, especially those of us who may have went to college or, who were fortunate enough to get, a master's degree or a higher education degree. We take for granted how many people in this country are struggling financially. Like, yeah, we can't afford to go to $60, $70 brunches every weekend or something like that, but there are people who literally don't make $60, $70 a day, or
yes,
are struggling to make it through the week. And being poor is expensive. If they don't get you on the front end, they get you on the back end. I mean, you think about the fact that people can't, afford to go see a dentist about a toothache, and then, 6 months down the line, that a root canal, and they have to have dental surgery, and they have to come out of pocket for those things. And it really snowballs for people. So, having something like this, something like CapWay, is hugely beneficial to a lot of people. How are you guys getting the word out and warming people up to the idea, people who traditionally have, been underserviced, who've been underbanked, or who have never banked at all? How are you warming them up to the idea that, banking can really serve them and transform their lives?
Well, when it comes to, so we do have it kind of two different ways. When it comes to people who are completely unbanked, one of the biggest things is trust. So we meet people all the time who have, thousands of dollars like in their house, which is crazy when you think about it, because it's like their house burns down, like there's no security, like there's no FDIC, there's no safety net. But when they either haven't had access to a bank or they've only heard bad things about a bank, a lot of times it's a building block. So it's not like I expect to go to someone who's completely unbanked and be like, hey, yeah, that $10,000 that you got sitting in your closet, come deposit it and bank with CapWay. It's not going to happen overnight. There's 100% a process to it. So maybe it's where they start out just looking at our financial education, or maybe it's an event that they will come to, and it's maybe it's them starting to finally follow and become comfortable with the brand and who we are as a company, and see that like we're not like the other guys. We get people all the time who we get this thing like, you're not the man. And it's like, no, we're not the man. Like totally different. So trust building is just huge. And then when it comes to people who are already banked and just looking more so for a better option, is we say this thing all the time where it's, for us, we're big on starting people having very uncomfortable talks, but in comfortable settings. And so when I say that, a lot of people who are struggling, it might be like your homegirl who honestly might even have like a Gucci purse, but she's never going to like let it come off that she's struggling. You know what I'm saying? It's like we all kind of, a lot of us put on like this front, especially because of social media. Like social media is like the devil when it comes to like certain aspects. And it's the same way if you go like, this, like if you go to LA and it seems like everybody in LA is like completely balling, doing like this, like you trying like, I need to get to LA, like everybody's like living it up. And the truth is like they're living like 4 or 5 to a house, like they're our roommate. Mm-hmm. Us is like, how do we start having those conversations of being like, stop trying to struggle and bank with a bank who's hard to draw these fees when like you can't afford it. Or if it's, look, here's somebody who sees, like I mentioned earlier, like our biggest thing is being like, look, we see you, like I see you, and it's not about judgment. It's not about you feeling like I'm called or feeling like you're dumb if you don't necessarily know like the financial system the way you feel you should know. It's about like we see you, like this was made for you, and let's not look rich and be broke. Like let's literally like learn money and put money in a place and in a way where we're gonna literally become financially healthy. So it's building trust, having those uncomfortable talks, we'll put them in comfortable settings. And then as far as our actual strategy, a lot of what we do is B2B2C. It's not necessarily directly B2C, so business to consumer. We do a lot of business to consumer. And we do those through channels of everything from schools, employers, community organizations. And so we have 7 verticals that we have as a B2B2C that we work with as far as also touching our audience and getting the word out and bringing them on board and building trust and having those conversations. Plus we do events. So it's a few different ways, but the biggest thing is, once again, building trust and being like, hey, we see you in a good way.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I mean, I think people are just afraid, right? Like, I mean, even I've had in the past years, I had to change my relationship with money. Like, you just got to confront it and be like, okay, well, I'm going to get ahead of this. And if you just have no knowledge and no resources and no one you feel comfortable in talking with about these things, it's very comfortable. It's very easy to kind of stay in that place and keep doing the same thing because it's seemingly working, or, it's getting you by for now. So, I mean, I think you guys are definitely on the right path with that. So what is the most powerful thing you've learned about, like, the people who you're servicing, so the underbanked, the unbanked, since launching the company? Like, have you had any, like, really big revelation about this audience or about, the financial services industry in general?
I coming from a community where a lot of my friends and family was part of this audience, I won't say there's been a lot that has like shocked me or necessarily. One thing that I do always say though when it comes to this audience is, because this audience was my grandmother, and it was my great grandmother, and it was my uncle, and it was my sister. The biggest misconception that a lot of people have when it comes to people who are financially underserved is that, oh, well, they just need to work better, harder, or they just need another job, or, they just should have went to school and did A, B, and C. Like, it is really not that black and white. And people try to make it that way. I mean, we meet people who are working 3 jobs. And don't get me wrong, it might be 3, minimum wage jobs or 3 low-paying jobs, but they're working 3 jobs. And so it frustrates me when I see, quote-unquote, mainstream America be like, oh, well, that's your problem. Like, you just need to get another job or you need to work harder. Like, some of these people are literally working from sun up to sundown, and they still can't make ends meet. And the reality of it is the gap of financial inequality is growing in America. So even people who was at one time, considered middle class or consider themselves middle class really don't realize that, no, you really fall in the financially underserved piece of America. Like, you really are not middle class. And so I would say that it's not necessarily anything that shocked me. What shocks me is people who just don't know anything about this market, the assumptions that they make, and they're so wrong. Meeting someone who's never been outside of like a large metropolitan area. So maybe they've only been into like a New York or LA or Dallas or Chicago. And then I'll do something like pull up a map of like every banking location of Chase and like seeing their mouth drop, because in their mind, Chase is a national bank. So therefore Chase is like in every state and it covers the nation. And it's like, nope. Actually, Chase does not cover every state, and actually, it's a national bank, but no, it does not touch dead people across the nation. So I won't say it's anything that's necessarily shocked me about me knowing and learning it. It shocked me how people who are just in a bubble or just not in the know, how deep their misconceptions are.
Yeah, I can definitely see that. So why did you decide? I mean, I feel like Atlanta is kind of a tricky market because I imagine that you have a lot of the unbanked there or underbanked in Atlanta, but you also have some of the most, affluent Black people in the country. So has it been an interesting process kind of relocating your company there? And how has it been treating you? Why did you decide that might be the right fit for you as opposed to any other larger financial hub?
Well, I didn't want to. So late last year, we were part of Plug and Play, which is a accelerator out of Sunnyvale, so in Silicon Valley. And I debated. I actually was renting a room out and was staying in Mountain View, and I really, really debated on staying in Silicon Valley for CapWay. Because I knew what was in our pipeline. I knew where we were headed. I knew the possibilities of what we were doing. And I was like, okay, well, and our money comes from the Valley. Of all the money we've raised, probably 90% of it comes from the Valley. So my mom said, okay, well, maybe this is a good place to stay. And I ended up having a health crisis in Q4 of last year, which actually made me end up going back to Mississippi for majority of Q4 of last year, just not taking care of myself and running, 100 miles per hour. And when I was there, it was, get better and eventually go back to the Valley or, not. And so I debated on 5 locations. The Valley was 1, of course. LA was 2. New York was 3. Austin was 4, and Atlanta was 5. So I narrowed it down to 5 places. New York, of course, if anybody knows, New York is considered the financial technology capital of the world. So it's where fintech happens. New York is great. I'm there all the time. I love New York, but it's very dirty. And I just didn't know
I agree. I like being in and out of New York. I'm just like, this city has a lot going on, but it's filthy and it's expensive and for no reason.
Yes. Yeah, I was like, I spent 6 months in New York, like on and off, a majority there, because I wanted to test it out. And I was like, it's really dirty. It's like I'm paying $2,000 a month for a box. I don't know. So New York kind of dropped on the list. The Valley was, of course, high on the list because our money came from there. Like I said, I spent a lot last year in Mountain View because of plug and play, but there's no culture there. Like unless you go to Oakland, like there's nothing. It's like just a tech bubble, and outside the tech bubble, there is a bubble. Like people don't think of real world problems the way that people in the real world see real world problems. You know, everybody there's worried about, you know, a new scooter. And it's like, people are dying because they don't have health care. Like, who gives a fuck about a scooter? Like, let's figure out some real world problems to solve here. So my alignment as a founder in trying to solve issues and build companies that really do make an impact, yes, I get it. Catching a scooter gets you quicker down the sidewalk to, like, I don't know, your next meeting. But I'm trying to change lives here on a different scale. So my alignment of building a life-changing company was not aligned with, I think, the majority of what Silicon Valley is thinking of. So I want to get out of that bubble. Austin came about, and I had been to Austin before. So my first company, when I left San Jose, I went to Austin. And I don't know, I just didn't think it was a good place to go back to. I loved it. I don't think anything wrong with Austin. I love Austin. I didn't think it was the right fit for CapWay. So came down to L.A. and Atlanta. Atlanta was back in the South, and our first focus as a company wasn't in the southern states. So that played a role in it, to be quite honest. It was like, okay, we're back in the center of the market that we're going to target first. Because as a company, you know, you have to go by in steps. So our first focus area was the South. Second focus area, of course, is national, and the third focus area is to go internationally. So it was back then in the South. The South has the highest region of unbanked and underbanked residents. So that played a role. Atlanta is also considered your number 3 as far as fintech hubs. It is more of a payments hub, but overall it is considered number 3 when it comes to fintech. So there was the resources and the opportunity there to come to what's still considered a financial hub or financial opportunity. And then the third one was I had friends here who had done really well with startups, and Atlanta is still definitely a growing tech hub. And so looking at those 3 things, I decided I ended up picking Atlanta over LA, and we ended up moving here at 1st of January.
So how are you liking it?
Well, as far as business is good, how I like it, I don't do anything. Everybody's always like, how's Atlanta? I'm like, I don't know. Like, I get up at almost 4 or 5 o'clock between, like, meditation, reading, working out. Then I head to the office. I'm at the office, like, usually 9. I'm, like, walking in my door, like, 8 p.m. So I haven't really explored the city, to be 100% honest. I work. But, I mean, it's a nice city. It's cool. It's hot as hell in the summertime, which I knew that. So it's called High Atlanta. But so far it's been cool. Would I 100% be like, oh, this is it? Like, we are here. We would never move. Like, this is like the God-given answer. Like, I know for sure this is it. I can't say that, to be 100% honest. You know, we've had those talks even as a team to say, hey, we came here. You know, is it helping us? Are we growing here? Would it have been a better option to, like, go to, like, LA, which LA, like, we don't know, the LA actually has a lot of financial things going on in LA. So you have even companies like Green Dot and Dave. A lot of them are located somewhere in the LA area. Plus, LA is also a quick 1-hour flight from the Valley. And, you know, you have that footprint in the Valley. So I won't honestly even say that this is home, like home. This is where we are now, and, you know, it's so far so good. The cost of operating here it's much cheaper than operating in the Valley or LA or New York. And so I'm a numbers person. I look at what's the return of investment of being in Atlanta. I look at the data. I look at the opportunity. So I don't look at a location just to be like, oh, that's cool. Like, I want to be in New York for the sake of saying, like, I'm in New York. If being in New York makes sense for my company, and it means that the return of investment means we're going to get more business in New York, and we're going to, you know, whereas we could have made, you know, $20 million in Atlanta, but we would have made $80 million in New York, and it would have offset the cost of being in New York. I'm a numbers person. So right now it makes sense for us to be in Atlanta, and I'll continuously evaluate things as as we scale.
Totally makes sense. Well, what can we anticipate next from CapWay, and what should we be on the lookout for in like the next 6 months to a year?
So our debit cards are set to launch next month. So
congratulations! Exciting.
Oh, you don't understand the process of launching a debit card. Let me tell you.
I can imagine
long nights. It is very regulatory, compliance, KY, like all the KYC. Even the artwork. Like I never realized like how tedious it all is. Like your artwork can't look like this, or the outline of this can't be that color. Like it's crazy. So it's been a journey to even get the debit cards out, but the debit cards are set to launch next month, and we'll be deploying also into a lot of schools come fall, and we haven't made that announcement yet. So, well, I just told you on your podcast, but
surprise!
We'll be going into a lot of schools. So over this fall, but definitely even moving forward. When people are complaining about there's no financial literacy in schools, one thing that we are doing now and we'll continue to do, and we'll grow it and grow it and grow it even more, is that you will start to see supplemental curriculum by CapWay in high schools, middle schools, and in colleges. And so we're going to actually deploy those into a few universities and some schools even come fall 2019. So super excited about that. So the kids are now leaving school, whether that's high school, whether it's leaving college, and they understand what money really looks like and how it works, how it operates. I understand on the different levels. So that's really big for us and important. And was very important to me to get done. And outside of that, within the next year, we will definitely be deploying our next major feature of CapWay, which is microlending. And the microlending is 100% so that, if you can't get the money from your mom or from your homegirl or from definitely keeping you away from payday lending, you can come to CapWay. And the whole point, once again, is building that ecosystem so that it's like everything's under one roof. Like we're going to literally help you get financially healthy in one place and not be sending you here, and here. And have like this crazy fragmented thing going on. Like, no, we can do it all in one. So our next major launch as far as our ecosystem will be microlending, which our goal is to do that first of 2020.
Okay. So a lot to look out for. You're going to be a very, very, very busy woman, and we're very excited for you.
Well, thank you.
So congratulations, and keep up the good work.
Well, thank you. It's definitely going to be a long, it's going to be a long next few months, but hey, I tell you all the time, I was built for it, so we're good.
All right. Well, before I let you go, I have one user-submitted question. And so every episode we take a question. So I have a little group chat that I send out. People who listen to the podcast regularly, and I send out, who's going to be on the show, and then I give them the opportunity to write in. So I'll go ahead and read it to you, and you can give them some feedback. So, hi, my name is James, and like you, Sheena, I'm a non-technical founder. I'm near completion of my first app and would like to apply to a business accelerator when finished. I've heard that one of the most critical factors surrounding getting in is your team. So my co-founder and I have a strong business background. We've contracted all the development work out. We would have preferred to have a CTO, but we have struggled finding someone reliable. Do you have any advice on finding a technical founder or ways to get around being penalized for having a part-time technical team member?
Actually, really great question. It's really hard finding a CTO when you don't have the money to pay them up front. And that's because they're all being recruited by, like, the big guys. Even if they, if trust me, they come out of college, like, Google's already waiting, like, at their door. And it's much more, like, Google's like, entry level, we'll give you $150 versus you being a startup being like, no, we can give you, like, 5%, but, we're not really making any money right now. You got to find someone who's who truly believes in your vision, and that is not hard. That's not easy to do at all. My advice would be, I ended up having a CTO for CapWay. I did not have a CTO for Sheena Allen, but I also never applied to an accelerator. Now, there are some accelerators who will give you a pass, and some will say, hey, you can come in, but, you know, in the process of this, you need to, you know, find a technical co-founder. But then there's also a way to think a lot of times we overlook places to look for a technical co-founder. So maybe it is going to an accelerator, and just say you don't get into the accelerator, but you might, you know, build that relationship with maybe the managing director and say, hey, you know, for the companies that come through here, if one company doesn't make it, could you potentially introduce me to the technical person on the team that doesn't make it? Because I don't know if people know this or not. I know, Amanda, you work with accelerators. Is most teams actually don't make it through the process. Like, there's always like one team who like break up like before the end.
Yeah.
Or like
a lot of
teams
teams break up.
Exactly. And I think that's one place I think people overlook potentially looking for a technical person. It's like, okay, you applied for Techstars, you didn't get in, but hold their relationship and say, hey, you know, Amanda, you're managing director, you know, that one team that you know that broke up, could you potentially introduce me to, or would you introduce me to the technical co-founder of that team? Because I guarantee you, as Amanda just said, there's going to be one or two that is either going to break up before the end or less than a month after demo day, they're no longer together. So I think also looking in places that most people don't think to look for a co-founder, because most people are always like trying to pitch their idea on like Twitter or things like that. It's going to come through either relationships. It's going to come through, most people find their technical co-founder in school. So maybe they went to school for like computer science, or they went to like Stanford, and Stanford has like a startup program, and they found the co-founder there. Or it's going to be finding like the diamond in the rough, and it's going to be through things like, hey, introducing to the CTO of the company that, you know, broke up when they came to your accelerator. So I think it's also very key to try to find them in places that most people don't or won't think to look. And then I would actually say, and Amanda, I would actually like you to chime in on this. I would actually say that investors are not as bad as they used to be when it comes to not having a technical co-founder. Now, I would say maybe 5 years ago, like, investors would be like, nope, you know, find somebody technical and come back. But there are quite a few investors who are even vocal on like Twitter about that it's okay to have a remote team, or maybe it's okay to outsource your development early if it makes sense, and if you are on track, you know, to eventually hire someone as a technical member of your team. So I think that you just have to find the right fit.
It's really difficult. I mean, there's really no easy answer to this question, in my opinion. It's just like, I've had really wonderful relationships with technical partners or technical, contractors who, you know, I can't believe they built the things they built for me, and they were such an amazing resource for me. And then I've had terrible relationships. And then I've had relationships that were great that just dissolved just because the developer had a change in lifestyle. Like, maybe they decided, you know, I don't want to work on this type of project anymore. And I think oftentimes the developer can be a liability to some degree, right? Because the project can be so wrapped up and dependent on them that they can really set things back as far as business development, because, you know, developers they're creatives at their core, right? Like, even though they might be highly left-brained, like, they have an element of creativity, and they operate in a way that is unlike most business professionals. So, you know, I've had developers who just be like, oh, I didn't hear from them for like a month, and they're like, oh, I just needed a mental break. And I'm like, what do you mean? Like, I mean, you're on retainer. What are you talking about? You can't just take a mental break for a month without notifying me, right? Like, if you need a break, fine, but just call me, like, text me. Just let me know that, like, you need a moment. So it's very tough, but I would agree with you that I think people are easing up on that, and that I think people are just working on more projects, and they're realizing how difficult it is to find great technical talent. Even if you do find someone who has the skill set, like finding someone with the interpersonal skills who can mesh well with your team, who plays well with others, and who actually delivers what they need to do on time
and
is
patient.
extremely, yes.
Like, a lot of them don't have patience.
Difficult.
You might find one, and then it's like, yes, like, I finally got, like, my technical co-founder. And I've seen this a lot. It's like, okay, you get to have a team. It's like, yes, like, I finally found my technical co-founder. And the technical co-founder might have told you this, but in, like, his or her mind, like, they're on the time clock. And it's like, look, if we can raise money or something ain't popped off in, like, 3 months, like, I'm going to go and take a job at Google for $150. And then, like, they didn't tell you that, and then, like, you're, like, 3 months in, and you still, like, grinding it out, and you look up whether the technical person on your team is like, so, yeah, like, I thought by now we would raise money, and, you know, my mom is, like, going to kick me out, so, yeah, I took the offer from company X who's going to pay me, you know, $125. That happens a lot, too.
So many times. So
there's a
or like they don't even like they may not even be moving towards a project that like or like a job that pays them that much. It might just be something that's stable, right? Or an environment that they feel comfortable in. So like offer a lot of times, you know, you may be working on a project that the developer might be passionate about, but then like they might lose their passion for it or find something else that they find more interesting. Maybe they get to work in an environment where they get to be with their fellow developers and it's a gaming community or something like that. And they're like, oh, this is where I want to play all day, right? And then they'll just kind of leave you. So I think it's very important to build a I think you should be increasingly learning more about, you know, your product itself. So even if you can't code, like how to manage this product and how it's built. Like when I first started getting into building products, it was important to me to communicate with my developers as much as possible. So now even though, like, I can't build what they build, I know enough about it that if something goes wrong, I can typically pinpoint where the problem is, where to start with, and who to contact to fix it, right? And then having, you know, a small fleet of developers on standby that you can, you know, outsource or contract work to, who will be able to kind of get things rectified for you in a reasonable amount of time. And so, and that just takes networking. Networking and talking to as many people as possible.
Yeah, I mean, part of the App It Out sessions that we do, because App It Out is actually created for non-technical founders. And one of the entire pieces of the sessions that we take is on finding technical help. And it's because I see so many people who will go to like a freelancer website, and crazy enough, they will pay like all the money up front, or they'll like give a huge deposit. Like, I don't know, the guy might charge them. We'll say developers are going to charge them $10K, and they're so anxious about their project, and they get like this freelancer that they met online, you know, like $5,000 up front. And yet they have not learned anything themselves. And once again, being non-technical does not give you an excuse to not know at least the basics. Like, kind of like you just said, like, you know, you can pinpoint like where the issue is. So like, know what GitHub is, know how to at least follow, you know, if they're even working on your project. And so we covered that of saying like, look, being non-technical does not mean that like you're just completely dumb to the process. Like, you need to know at least A, B, and C, so that you're not getting completely screwed out of your money, which happens a lot. So to that point, I don't think there is there's not an easy answer. But once again, I think definitely look in places where most people probably won't think to look. And once again, there's also people who are now a little more lenient in giving you time to find a technical co-founder while still outsourcing. But they're kind of having on a time clock and saying, like, okay, you can outsource to get maybe your MVP up, but, you know, by the time you get to this level, you know, we need to know that you have someone technical on your team. But it is really, really hard. And I've seen 4 or 5 companies form to try to connect people with technical co-founders, and none of them have just completely scaled because it's really hard.
It's just a very fickle thing. It's a very fickle thing. And, like, the thing that's crazy about it is that even if you had a team of all developers, who had all the technical talent, they likely couldn't scale a company by themselves because you need some true entrepreneurs. You need someone who has a business mind to actually build a business around the product and to get it to customers. So it's just a really slippery slope. I would say, I mean, if you've already gotten this product built, there may not be a lot of immediate technical needs. And maybe I would sell it that way. It's that, like, this is our MVP. We're going to be, rolling this out over the next few months, and perhaps we'll pivot in the accelerator, but we have a little runway to find someone technical, but right now the product's in a really, really good space, and we're really proud of what we produce, and we have freelancers who are supporting us right now, but ultimately, we will be able to, bring on a CTO in a few months, but we just need a little runway to do so.
Yeah.
Well, all right. So I think good chat. I think it was really good feedback. I think people will really find this valuable and insightful. And so it was great catching up with you. I know you're super busy, but we got to talk more and just stay in touch with one another. So, I'm going to be praying for your continued success down there in Atlanta, and I'm excited to see everything grow and scale and for you to really change people's financial futures.
Well, thank you. It's going to be a journey, but we're looking forward to it, the marathon.
The marathon continues.
Thanks for listening to MVP. If you'd like to hear more from me or our guests, visit mvpodcast.substack.com for exclusive content, updates, and announcements. And if you love the show, please subscribe, rate, and review us, or follow us at The Amanda Spann at MV Podcast. Thanks again, and see you next week.